Hey, what's going on, everyone? Joe Menza here, and I'm back on the table here with the hot press by Winsor and Newton, 11 by 15, and you can see I've just poured a bunch of water on here. I want to get this good and wet, really. I'm using the large Hake brush, just a generic, the large. I use that for kind of applying large amounts of water. It's just a generic Hake brush. And you can see now here, if I'm taking this blue, ultramarine blue, and I'm just kind of blocking in the shapes that I want for this. I'm calling this one Green Lagoon. It's got some mountains with a bit of a lagoon. If you go on Pixabay, you look up Green Lagoon, you'll find where I kind of got the inspiration for this one. Not any specific picture, but just a general, feeling for what I wanted to do. And I kind of wanted this blue-green, sort of sea green effect. And so I'm just blocking this in, applying some yellow, and I'm letting the generous amount of water do a majority of the work. I'm using these little colors. These are Paul Rubens. These are very, very small tubes of paint, but I had gotten them when I was trying out just some different paints through Amazon I had ordered. So here I'm taking some white, believe it or not. I'm just going to kind of use this and shape in a bit of what I'm trying to achieve here. And you can see I kind of use my board that I have back there. I'll actually lift some color off of it, sometimes on purpose, sometimes unintentionally, but I let it go. I gave it a little bit of a spray with water there. And, that's the thing I need to impress upon fellow artists out there that are watching, especially beginners, is to allow for randomness, allow the art to happen. Very important that you try not to force anything, and if you see something, you take advantage of what looks good by your eye. Even if it's not exactly to the photo or what you're trying to paint. This is art. We're not trying to copy something else exactly. You may have a client that wants you to paint something exactly, but there still needs to be room for randomness and for that artistic effect. So I'm allowing for that here, and I'm allowing the vision to unfold. I had one viewer that said that, they had a really hard time, reproducing something in one of the paintings or skies or something along those lines. And my advice to that person was try not to reproduce what I'm doing. Take that technique, let it happen. Skies are very complicated to pull off anyway. But you just have to try different techniques and what works best for you. I watched a lot of videos on skies. I still don't feel 100% confident when I'm doing skies, but I've come up with different ways to, kind of allow that to happen. And, you have to forgive yourself to say, hey, I'm not going to reproduce this pixel by pixel, dot by dot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at something for inspiration, and then I'm going to try to recreate the feeling that I get from that particular object. Try to go for an effect as opposed to exactness of copying and then judging yourself at the end of how good you are as an artist. And you say, well, mine didn't come out as accurate as this, so therefore I'm not in control of what I'm doing. That might be true if you're a portrait painter and you're trying to get an exact rendering of a face. But in this case here, this is supposed to be relaxing, enjoyable, and fun. And we're doing landscapes here. No one is going to look at your landscape and say, oh, this doesn't match up this exactly. Matter of fact, what'll happen is a lot of people will look at a landscape and it'll say, that reminds me of a particular place. That reminds me of a particular range of mountains. And let their imagination take them into your space. So again, I'm still kind of shaping this out. And as long as this stays wet, I can play, I can have fun. And that's why I like using the flat table. I'm painting flat. For me, it's a little more challenging because I have to lean over. I'm actually standing up, which I don't typically do or like to do when I'm painting. I like to have something vertical where it's, right in front of me. Now here I'm adding a little more. I've got the yellows going here. I'm trying to get that green and sort of that sea green. And so until it looks like I want it to, I'll just keep playing. Again, grabbing some blue here. And hot press paper now, the paint will sit on top a little more. It won't absorb in as quickly. This brush here is actually a Bob Ross blending brush. It's very, very soft. I'm going to do probably I'll do an episode committed to brushes because I think a little too much emphasis is sometimes put on brushes. For example, we use the Hake brush from Ron Ranson, the Hake brush. And it's an excellent brush. I would not have it in my toolbox, but you don't have to have that brush. You can go to a hardware store and buy brushes and make those work. If you learn your tools, you can make your tools work. There are people out there that finger paint and they don't use brushes at all, and they turn out fantastic work. Okay, so I'm still doing a little dabbing and some sculpting and sort of shaping this little hilly, mountainous area out. You can see how my lagoon to the right is starting to come into view. And I'm trying to achieve a little softness at the top just by lifting and creating some textures into this mountain or hilly area. And just lifting with a tissue. And then what I'll do is I'll come in and put in some darks to accentuate the light. We reserve our darks for the end because we paint from light to dark. It just works out best for the most part in watercolor. Okay, now as I go to my fan brush, I'm going to my darker color. I'll use a little indigo, which is like a blue-red, very dark. And by taking the darks, we're going to start making the light areas pop. Now, although I did say we can go from light to dark, that doesn't mean we can't bring some lights back in, especially yellows. If I see some areas where maybe I can get some highlights in, and I went a little too far with the dark, I'll bring those back in. What I'm looking for here is sort of a textural, bright, sort of a seaweed type color. And I'm always thinking of ways to do textures. So now in I'll come with some more dark in the mountain area. Again, using the fan brush. Now as I do this, I'll look and see, okay, this is great at the bottom. Maybe I'll go a little bit higher with it. Maybe the contrast of this mountain will actually look better if I go higher up, as you see. And that contrast immediately, the contrast and counter change between the sky and this mountain area I'm liking what I'm seeing. And here I'll give it a little spray. Now, people will say, well, why did you spray it there? Or why did you, add white here or whatever? Sometimes it's a little instinctive on my part, but sometimes I want to kind of make things blend, and I'm adding the water afterward instead of mixing with the water and letting it happen. I'm spraying it on top, so I'm introducing the water back into the paint. If it's a little too heavy, I want to break it up a little bit. So the only thing really left here that I'm concerned about is I wanted more water, more lagoon. I've lost some of that. So I'm going to use my brush here. I'm going to try to bring that back into play by re-wetting and opening this area back up again. But I do want a sort of bluey green sort of an effect. I've got this liquid here that I use as in a spray bottle. And I'm just going to try adding a little and letting that run. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of white to that just to make that a little creamier, blend in a little bit better. And I want that to go back and have a little distance to it. Now, while that kind of sets up a little bit, I'm going to just dab in a little more texture to the foreground. My eyes are always kind of bouncing around, like, what can I do? What can I fix? I think it's human nature, but we have to be careful with this. It can be a blessing and a curse. Now, I'm still looking to get some darks in, so I'm taking sort of that indigo and darky purpley color and just kind of bouncing some of that in with a little tissue. Remember what I said about brushes. You can use brushes, you can use all kinds of things. You can use tissues, you can use sponges, you can use saran wrap. Some people use salt. People use all kinds of things, all kinds of different ways to get textures onto the paper. And another way I'll use to get textures is I have my spray bottles. I have my spray bottle with my yellow ochre in it, or I have a little bit of red that I spray. In this case here, I have that blue in the spray bottle that I had poured out before, and I'm just trying that over the top of the green, and I do like the effect that I'm getting there. Now, I do want that to set up, so I'm going to get out the blow dryer and dry that so that I'm pretty much set with that. So then I'll go forward with whatever I put on top. If I open it back up again by re-wetting it, that's fine. But once I get it to a point where it's like, okay, I want this to kind of stay here, I'll give it a shot with the hair dryer. You don't have to have a hair dryer. Someone told me, hey, I had to go out and get a hair dryer. It's like you can walk away for 10 minutes, come back and let it be, let it dry naturally. If you're outside, it's going to dry faster. But, for the purposes of doing videos, it's helpful to have a hair dryer to dry things more quickly so you can stay within the confines of a reasonably timed video. Now, I'm taking my darks and I'm outlining this lagoon area here to kind of define it a little bit. And you can see that just that little edge there is really making it more appear to the eye that there is kind of a lake structure here. Now, I don't want to do too much more here, but I am looking for where I can have darks and lights and some variations. So I'm just kind of playing with things in this, without making mud, obviously, but making little shapes and little textural things. Taking a sponge or taking a tissue and kind of blotting in different things. So I'm mostly done here. This is kind of like my final stage of the painting where I'm looking around and thinking, what little things can I do to accentuate, take a step back and, what can I add? Is there any little things? Nothing major, but just little things that can, maybe something I missed. Maybe there's a shape that doesn't quite look right to the eye. Maybe there's something that stands out in a way I don't want it to. And so this is the time I take to make those little final alterations. And then I like to lay a mat on top and kind of get that window so I can see if I'm happy with the direction that I've gone, and then maybe a couple final little things, and then I'm complete. So now here I thought I'd add like a little gamboge or a mustardy color. It's just not really working, so I'll kind of dab that out and come back with like some lemon yellow. I'm always looking at the distance perspective as well, too, and you want things closer to you to be sort of darker, brighter, more obvious, and that'll give you that distance effect. So if I add some yellow, some brightness, and even more darks, that will give me that effect that I'm looking for. Okay, so I'm kind of giving this the final dry here, and then I'll throw a mat over the top, and we'll see how this looks. And I'm pretty happy with it, I can say. This one has a very pleasant, very pleasant view for the eyes. So I'm giving it a good dry. Okay, here we go with the matte. And I'm pretty happy with this one. So my final step is I like to put the painting up on the easel if I want to make any little last minute changes, but this one looks pretty good. I thank you once again for joining me, everyone, and if you have any questions, let me know. I hope this video inspires and helps you. And if you want to see a longer version of this video, you can always go on members or my Patreon and check out the longer version of this video. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great week.